Hi everybody. Today I want to talk about a subject that makes me personally very sad. There's a lot of stuff that's been in the news lately, and let me just pull up my list here. Recently, there's been in the news an article by the Journal of Medical Ethics, and um, what these people are saying is that it's okay, or they're arguing that it should be okay to have what they call a post-birth abortion. So I personally, I'm pro-life, so, or really I like to say pro-choice, as in that humans should have a choice too about their life. And my son was an unplanned pregnancy, and I don't say this really ever, but I was in a huge mess when I got pregnant with him, and I chose to keep him, and I never regret it, never. And he's wonderful and perfect, and if it weren't for him, I would be still a mess right now. But anyways, I just want to read to you a little bit about what these people are saying, and I want to talk about how they're so similar to the Nazis. I'm also reading a book right now by Jim Marrs, The Rise of the Fourth Reich. And it's weird that this just came up in the news, and then I just read this page, and so I'm going to read a few different things to you, and then talk about that. So here's some of the things from this published thing from these people. They title it, After Birth Abortion, Why Should the Baby Live? And they go on to talk about how, let's just say a mother got some prenatal tests that showed that the baby was going to have some kind of a genetic abnormality, and she probably would have had an abortion, but there are certain tests that are really expensive to get when a woman is pregnant, and so they're arguing that in those examples, the baby should just be euthanized. And they're saying basically that some of these diseases can cause, like, I suppose, more suffering, okay? And so I guess that's going to be up to this doctor to make a call. Now, another thing that recently came in the news is a woman, I got this on Natural News, was an organ donor, and she had tried to commit suicide, and then she woke up on an operating table where they were literally trying to take her heart, and it's a common practice for them to declare someone dead when they're not actually dead. They just say, oh, she's brain dead, or oh, she's blah, and they just go ahead and remove the organs before the person is what we would call dead, because we're like, human beings. We're not complete soulless zombies at this point, like a lot of doctors are. And so I think this kind of correlates to that. So their whole argument, is going to leave it up to some doctor's call. And if doctors are just basically killing people to harvest organs, then who's to say they're not going to just make that call for a baby to harvest that baby's heart? Maybe their brain is messed up or their face is deformed, but let's just take their heart and give it to this other Aryan baby over here. Anyway, I'm just saying there's a lot of similarities to Nazis. Let me just read to you one of the things that these people are saying. Oh man, I just totally lost it. It's a few paragraphs down, but it says the newborn and the fetus are morally equivalent. And they state the moral value of an infant is equivalent to that of a fetus in the sense that both lack those properties that justify the attribution of a right to life to an individual. So they're basically saying, yeah, they don't have a right to really live. And then they go on to say both a fetus and a newborn certainly are human beings and potential persons. They call them a potential person. But neither is a person in the sense of subject of a moral right to life. We take person to mean an individual who's capable of attributing to her own existence some, at least, basic value, such that being deprived of this existence represents a loss to that person. So if they don't know better than to die, then it shouldn't count, is what they're arguing. Well, I don't think any baby would know better than to die. I mean, that's why think about babies that get circumcised at 3 days old. Why do they do it when they're so young? Because they don't know any better. So by that argument, go ahead and murder them and take their organs and give them to the rich people. I mean, give me a break, people. Just to keep reading a little bit, and then I'm going to compare it to what the Nazi ideology was, which is exactly the same. This means that many non-human animals and mentally retarded human individuals are persons. Non-human animals are persons. Oh, okay. But that all the individuals who are not in the condition of attributing any value to their own existence are not persons. Merely being human is not in itself a reason for ascribing someone a right to life. Indeed, many humans are not considered subjects of a right to life. Spare embryos where research on embryo stem cells is permitted, fetuses where abortion is permitted, and criminals where capital punishment is legal. So they're comparing defective babies to criminals and stem cells, which I personally, I've been trying to get pregnant for 2 years, and I'm not going to do the in vitro thing. I'm not going to create an embryo and then pick the best one. I'm against that. We'll keep trying and have fun doing it, but that's about it. I'll get some diagnostic blood work, but I'm not going to create life and then pick the best. And I'm not going to end a life. So that's what they're saying. But let me just read to you a couple pages from the the Nazi mind control chapter of this, and it talks about how psychiatry actually stems from the Nazis. Really, all medicine stems from the Nazis, including for pharmaceuticals. But let me just read this part to you. He's talking about this guy Loeb. Anyway, initially they went for the most defenseless of the German population, the children. On July 14, 1933, only 6 months after Hitler was named Chancellor of the Reich, the law for the prevention of genetically diseased children was passed. A leading proponent for this legislature was Ernest Rudin, by then the director of the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. And of course, the Rockefellers donated the money to start the eugenics society here in America, apparently, but whatever. So here we go. Leading the movement to eliminate, quote, mental defectives from the German population were lawyer Karl Binding and the psychiatrist Alfred Hoche, who popularized the chilling phrase lebensunwertes Leben, or, quote, life unworthy of life. Now, what did that article just say? Let me just read again what they basically said. It is hard to determine when a subject starts or ceases to be a person. Where is it? Okay, merely being human is not in itself a reason for ascribing someone a right to life. And their whole argument for killing babies is that there's something wrong with them. And that is the exact point that they're making here. In a 1920 tract titled Die Freigabe der Vernichtung lebensunwerten Lebens, or, quote, lifting controls on the destruction of life unworthy of life, this text, arguably more than any other, made available to the Nazi regime an ethical rationale for euthanasia, which is exactly what this article is doing. That is exactly what this article is doing. There are so many parallels to the Nazi regime in our country today. There's a million books on it. Project Paperclip, he goes over this too. The Nazi scientists, everything in medicine, most of medicine today, I see Nazi parallels, which is why my husband, part of the reason I think he dropped out of medical school is because we would fight and fight and fight over just everything that he was being brainwashed. And he'd come home and I would say, why don't they test the vitamin D or whatever? But his little fake scenario wouldn't be set up for him to test anything other than what they wanted him to test, and their little fake diagnoses were already preset. It was obviously just set up to get him to look at things a certain way. And anyway, although in the early days of the regime, the public discussion would focus on the prevention of offspring with hereditary disease, hence sterilization, the destruction of life unworthy of life would spread as an unspoken principle. And, recently in the news also, these women in California prisons were being pressured into being sterilized. So there's another thing. And it was actually against the law. These prison doctors weren't supposed to be doing that, but apparently they were getting like $150,000 a pop, asking women repeatedly. The women would say no, then they would wait until the woman was under anesthesia and then ask her again. to sterilize them. So this is, you know, they ended up going to a, quote, hereditary health court, and it was 2 doctors, usually psychiatrists. One was a civil official, usually a judge, who acted as chairman. The euthanasia program was not carried out in open, but by secret decrees, because they knew that what they were doing was illegal. It was actually illegal, but they were just doing it anyway. And let me make sure I made all my points here, because I know I didn't. Another thing recently that just came out is this woman, very brave woman, a woman who had had an abortion, and she was speaking out here in Texas because Texas, Rick Perry, I'm really proud of him. He's trying to block he's trying to make a bill that blocks late-term abortion after 20 weeks. And there's a lot of pro-life protesters, and Rick Perry's getting a lot of heat for it, and so I commend him for standing up for life. But this woman was talking about her experience with the abortion, and she goes on for about 5 minutes, and then you hear these other protesters in the background literally chanting "Hail Satan," literally chanting that, these pro-choice people. I don't know if it was a joke to them or not, but there are Satanists. They do exist, and child sacrifice is part of their religion. And so, you know, and Nazis, I've been reading a lot and studying a lot about them in the last few years because my husband has a history degree and he's kind of gotten me into it. It was a religion. It was not just a political, I mean, Hitler himself said, anyone that thinks this is just a political movement doesn't know anything about it. And so, you know, I'm not saying that everyone who's had an abortion or is pro-choice is a Satanist. I'm not trying to say that. But what I am saying is that the Satanists are certainly pro-choice, and the Nazis are certainly pro-choice, and they certainly are all for, you know, murdering babies. So this is a wonderfully uplifting video, I'm sure, for all of you, but I just want to say this because I want you to just you know what's going on, because it's incrementalism. You know, maybe today it's, why should the baby live? I'm posting a very thoughtful journal on a real journal, and oh, because it's a real journal, it deserves a real argument. Well, these journals, you know, they only publish the studies that they want to publish. And if you go and you look about, you know, you learn about Project Paperclip, you'll realize that what seems to have happened at the end of World War II is, like, I don't mean 100 scientists, I mean thousands of scientists that were studying, you know, doing experiments on humans, murdering people, lots of horrible things. They cut deals with the United States and Russia, and they got hauled over here or over there so that they would be opted out of the Nuremberg trials, and they just continued their work. And, you know, the whole point of this guy's book, Rise of the Fourth Reich, is that they made a plan, they made an exit plan at the end of World War II of how they could continue. Then there was, of course, the rat lines, where a lot of them got swindled out with help from the Vatican, ironically enough. But this is just straight Nazism to me. So please just, you know, this is a very interesting book. This guy's a best-selling author. He'll keep your attention, and he will educate you. Every time I read one of his books, the last 60 pages are just pure sources. So check him out. I'm going to put the link to this book below, and I'm going to put the link to the video of this very brave woman who experienced an abortion and is now speaking out against it. And I just hope that you think about this and don't murder your babies. Please, give it to me. Don't murder it. This is just me looking out for you and hoping I can get people to think